Hi, I'm Shayla Worley.
Hi, I'm Sammy Shapiro.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Davis.
I was a 9-time U.S. national team member and actually went to World Championships and won gold there in Germany. We were the first team to ever win gold on foreign soil back in 2007. After that career, I went to the University of Georgia and became an All-American. Go Dogs!
I was on the U.S. national team from 2006 to 2011, and then I competed for Stanford University. And I started gymnastics when I was 3 years old as a preschool class that was offered to break up the day. Happened to be pretty good at it. My parents got a call from the coach at the time that was saying I had great upper body strength. They wanted me to come 3 or 4 times a week. Next thing you know, I get roped into it, and that was the end of it.
I started gymnastics when I was 3 and then ended up being on the national team for, I think, 5 years. I went to the 2008 Olympic trials, an Olympic selection camp, and then I was on the 2010 World Championship team and we won the silver medal. And then I went on to compete in college at the University of Georgia, competed all 4 years there, and was an All-American.
Gymnastics became serious for me around age 8 or 9. Before that, I was doing a bunch of different sports, and then at some point, gymnastics really started taking over. I got pretty good at it, and that's really when I started to dedicate myself and create goals and a plan and really make a lifestyle change all around gymnastics.
Throughout my entire gymnastics career, I think setting goals was really important and something I did on a regular basis. I had short-term goals, so daily, what was I going to do that day and achieve in practice? What corrections was I going to make? But I also had more longer term and very long-term goals. So long-term obviously being going to the Olympics. That's very long, but short-term and medium-term were like maybe this year, what am I going to achieve? What assignments did I want to get when I was going to the national team camp? But then of course, like I said, daily goals and writing them down and constantly reminding yourself, because you do get kind of down in the dumps sometimes when practices are hard, and so you have to constantly remind yourself why you're doing these things. Why are you taking the extra turns, making the effort, and you know, why are the sacrifices that you're making and your family are making, what's the point of them? And so I think remind yourselves of daily goals is really important.
Similar to every little girl, when you first start gymnastics, your goals are to go to the Olympics. And I feel like for a while that was a dream. For a lot of years it was kind of something that we talked about and kind of joked about with my family, and then as I got more serious with gymnastics and started doing elite gymnastics, it actually became a goal instead of a dream. It was still a long shot, obviously, because only a handful of girls out of the thousands that do gymnastics get to make the Olympic team, but that was definitely what I was striving for the early part of my career.
For me, the hardest part of gymnastics was just staying healthy. You know, I trained about 45 hours a week, twice a day. I started going to practice early in 3rd grade. I started leaving school early. And then I started doing 2-a-day practices at the end of 5th grade.
The intensity got a lot higher as soon as it became my entire life. And going from training a few hours a week, doing other sports, arts and whatnot, to essentially training 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Fairly little days off, lots of injuries, and just it's quite intense.
The hardest part for me, and this happens I think in a lot of elite gymnasts, was injuries. I was almost always playing catch up with everyone else, and I know probably everyone was going through it, but just a bunch of injuries during my elite career and then trying to manage those through college.
All that strain on your body, you know, with my body type, I just couldn't really quite take that level of intensity. So I continuously had broken ankles. A lot of mine were chronic issues, such as back issues, hamstring problems. And so that was the most frustrating part, is that I was trying to achieve all of these things, but constantly having these roadblocks where I couldn't practice.
So the injuries definitely taught me something every time it happened. And I think over the span of all of them in my gymnastics career, I wouldn't be the same person that I am today. I wouldn't go about my job and my marriage and my life the same way if I hadn't have dealt with some of those hardships during gymnastics. I can remember times where I'd have like a lower body injury, and bars was actually my weakest event, but I spent so many hours on bars when I was injured that's actually one of the reasons that I made the world team. So kind of using each different injury to learn something different and come back stronger.
It wasn't necessarily the wins or the biggest competitions that I made it to, but it was being able to come back from injury and all of the fear that goes along with that, and the the hit it takes to your self-confidence and the doubt, and am I ever going to come back and do the skills that I was able to do. So just every time I was injured, being able to show and prove to myself that with hard work and positivity and dedication, you can really get back to that level. And it's pretty cool to be able to say like, oh, this skill that I was afraid of, that I'd hurt myself on, I have now mastered it, and I'm consistent, and I'm proud to compete it.
I don't necessarily say it's the most proud of, but I think it makes it unique is that I have a skill named after me on beam, which is a lot harder than you might think, because not only do you have to create a unique skill and be able to do it, but you have to actually do it successfully at a World Championships or Olympics. So that knocks a lot of people out of the box for, if only 5 girls a year might even make the US team for Worlds or the Olympics. It's kind of difficult. And then you have to actually compete that event, which we all know that not every girl competes every event. So it's a lot harder than you think to have a skill named after you, and I think that I'm proud of that.
After 2008, I didn't make the Olympic team, and I got a lot closer than I think a lot of people, even myself, expected to. And so then it was that much more of a letdown when it didn't happen, because it had gotten so close and so real that I hadn't thought of a goal after that. And so I remember Kim and I sitting in the gym having a conversation. She's like, what are you gonna do now? And I literally hadn't thought past that day of when they were gonna choose the Olympic team. And so after that, coming back and actually setting realistic goals of making the world team and then achieving that. And then honestly, that's when I started thinking about going to college gymnastics. And I'm really proud that I competed all 4 years in college, despite the injuries that I had, and balanced being a student athlete. That was actually more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
I felt like my biggest accomplishments were being able to learn how to balance my priorities. Obviously, gymnastics was a major priority for me, but also school was. And from a very early age, I was taught how to balance both and how to focus on what I needed to do at the time and compartmentalize and prioritize health and fitness, but also sleep and studying. So lots of early lessons that were utilized in order to be successful.
I think I had a lot of role models, some of them being my teammates right next to me that were in the trenches every single day. Some of the girls that went to college, they'd come back and train, and I really admired them.
When I was just on the cusp of elite, Mohini Bahardwaj came to my gym to start training for the Olympics, and it was really amazing. That was kind of the first look into seeing how someone could be competing at the highest level on the biggest stage, and seeing her train alongside me was really impactful.
I went to Texas Dreams, and so someone that I obviously got to look up to every single day was Kim Zmeskal. She was a legend before me, and I was a little nervous going in my first day and doing gymnastics in front of someone that was so good at it. And then just growing that relationship during our time together. I trained there for, I think, 6 to 8 years, and I would call her one of my best friends now. I really grew to trust her. Obviously, she knows how to do gymnastics, so when she gives a correction, she gives it both ways. So like from a technical way, and then she gives you what she thought about when she was a gymnast. And so I think getting that from both angles was awesome.
Those relationships are maintained forever. So I think that it might start as a role model, but then it develops into a friendship, and that's really special.
So I took a sort of a hard turn out of gymnastics as soon as I retired from Stanford, went into the corporate world. I worked at Amazon in Seattle, and then was there for 3 years, and then got relocated to Los Angeles to help Amazon launch a new office. And most recently, I've just moved to Austin to work at Apple.
Currently, I'm a physical therapist, so I work at an outpatient PT clinic with mostly orthopedic and musculoskeletal injuries. And then I'm actually a brevet judge on the side as well. So during my long weekends, I like to go judge the best athletes in the world.
So after my gymnastics career, I actually went and got my MBA in finance, and now I work for JP Morgan doing wealth management and helping folks on both sides of their balance sheet. I think every single day, some of the fundamentals I learned in gymnastics, I fall back on all the time. One of them probably being time management. I think that doing anything with excellence at a high level requires a lot of dedication, but more importantly, it requires time management, and especially throughout college when you're now being expected to perform high in the classroom and with gymnastics. And so with what I do for work, time management is critical, and I think that's probably one of the best things I took away from gymnastics.
Very much outside of the realm of gymnastics, but what's interesting is how much, even in my day-to-day to this day, all of the skills that I learned as a gymnast apply and really help me progress in my career. And I mentioned before, whether it's time management or getting through challenging situations, or getting stuck, maybe with gymnastics it was fear, or not feeling prepared for competition. Well, sometimes if I don't feel prepared for a presentation, I fall back on those skills, and knowing that I used to do it back then, I can parlay those into what I do today. And it is pretty amazing how much gymnastics has built me and shaped me, and even though I am not using gymnastics today, all of those skills I learned are still so relevant in my everyday life.
I honestly don't know who I would be without gymnastics. And I see other people in professional fields that maybe didn't have this background. Some people can cut corners on treatment times and documentation, and that's not something that I would ever allow myself to do, because gymnastics taught me that discipline and integrity, that I'm doing this for me and this is the type of person that I am. Again, not because somebody's making me, but it's just who we are.
I think that goals, going to the Olympics, that type of thing is really great, and I wish that for plenty of gymnasts. But I think the reality is that you're gonna get so many more things out of the sport that aren't specific goals. You're gonna get lifetime skills, time management, excellence, discipline, ability to be coached. That's a really big one for the rest of your life. And so while it might be nice to have gold medals, I think that what will separate you for the rest of your life are some of these core life skills that you get from sports, and especially from gymnastics.
I think that we can pass along. Obviously, we have the technical skills, but that positive, encouraging attitude and more of a communicative strategy. And I think as a community as a whole, especially this camp, from what I've seen so far, it's all about the experience. And you're not going to look back and only think of the accolades that you had. You're going to think of the experience as a whole. So I think passing along those encouraging vibes and confidence and all of that is going to take these girls way farther in the future than just giving them corrections and telling them what to do.
When you're so in it, it doesn't feel like, the folks you looked up to, it's weird to think about how all of a sudden someone's looking up to you in that same regard. It fills me with a lot of pride. I feel very fortunate that I can then be that example for others, just as gymnasts that came before me were for me. And especially now in being able to coach at Beam Queen Boot Camp and see the next generation of girls and just be able to help them find love in the sport, because I think that's what attracts us all to the sport initially. And then as time goes on and when it does become more intense, sometimes that fun can be pulled out, and just remembering why you're doing it every day and helping instill that joy in it is really something that I enjoy most in coming back to these camps and giving back.
I transitioned out of gymnastics into the business world, but I do still spend my summers traveling to camps across the country, working with little gymnasts. And that for me is the best way to stay involved in the sport. I think it's the most purest form of giving back, and pouring into these kids and watching them make little corrections, and it's really exciting, and it reminds me kind of why I love the sport so much, and it's great to be able to bring the same excitement to other little girls.